If I told you that one of Australia's most high-profile Indigenous senators, who has worked tirelessly to help Indigenous communities, is in fact racist and in fact hates Indigenous Australians, you probably wouldn't believe me. You'd think I was being absurd or facetious or sarcastic, or maybe if you thought I were being serious, you would think I was simply lying. But alas, that's now a position we find ourselves in. A prominent Yes campaigner and Uluru Dialogue member, Marcus Stewart, has come out and accused Jacinta Price of hating Indigenous Australians and of having hate in her heart. Now, I couldn't believe this myself when I saw the headline, so I had to actually listen to the video. I had to listen to what he was saying, and unfortunately, it is as nonsensical as I initially thought. So let's take a listen.
In Senator Jacinta Price out there spreading lies, spreading mis and disinformation. I don't think I've come across anyone that hates Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander or seems to hate Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people so much. What have we done wrong in this debate to simply ask for a better chance at life for our most vulnerable? That's what we're seeking here.
Now, notably, this interview was with the ABC. This was not some fringe interview. It was not an interview that resurfaced on the internet from some obscure place of the internet. Rather, it was on the ABC, which itself is rather telling. But in any case, he now continues on about no voters for some time. He makes verifiably false assertions. He paints the Voice as simply an opportunity for Indigenous Australians to be heard, a simple advisory body.
The misinformation, the hate messaging, the fear stoking of the No campaign, and a cottoning on that there's a lot at stake now, that they're trying to sink what a simple ask is for a constitutionally enshrined voice, a voice through recognition to improve the lives of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, to simply ask our lawmakers and policymakers to listen to those who are disproportionately impacted most.
But the problem is, the Voice actually goes much further than that. The Voice is not a mere advisory body. The Voice is not merely symbolic. The Voice is not merely an opportunity for Indigenous Australians to be heard. Rather, it goes significantly further. The Voice will be able to make representations to all branches of the executive government, including the RBA, including climate bodies, including basically any branch of the executive government. That is by design. That's how the constitutional amendment is worded. Now, this gives the Voice access, and it also gives the Voice money. Access and money equals power. Now, this power would obviously go to entrenched elites. Clearly not people like Jacinta Price, because she would be excluded from the Voice. Rather, it would be people like Marcus Stewart. Now, not only that, this is going to give money, access, and therefore power on the basis of race. Now, this would appear to satisfy the textbook definition of racism, at least according to Wikipedia. So the Voice has major problems from the get-go at a purely normative level. However, we also need to add in the implications. The Uluru Dialogue, on which the Voice is based, is calling for a makarata. As I've discussed previously, the makarata would involve a financial payment. Now, this is not merely a guess, it is in the background documents to the Uluru Statement itself. It specifically calls for a financial settlement, which it seems would be a portion of GDP. Now, clearly this would come from our taxes, forcing taxes ever higher. Because if a portion of GDP is now going to go in the form of this treaty, well, that money has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is going to be our taxes. So it is manifest that the Voice is not merely advisory, is not merely symbolic, is not merely going to enable Indigenous Australians to have their voice heard, rather it goes significantly further and adversely affects many people, at least according to the Uluru Statement's own background documents. Now, he also talks about the Welcome to the Country. He talks about the idea that Jacinta Price is opposed to the Welcome to the Country. Now, we can debate the pros and cons of the Welcome to the Country statements, and we can have a reasonable, rational debate about the advantages and disadvantages. But saying that people who question it have, quote, hate in their hearts is absurd, especially when that person is Indigenous themselves. Perhaps if Marcus Stewart took more time to practice emotional intelligence, to listen to where such sentiments from Jacinta Price are coming from, and to listen where no voters are coming from, he might actually make more sense. He might come to grips with the objections that people have. He might actually listen to the problems with the Voice, rather than just sticking his head in the sand. But as it stands, he simply sounds condescending. He simply sounds like he is obfuscating. He simply sounds like he is trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. And let's be clear, the bullying and attempted emotional blackmail won't work. Australians can clearly see that's what's being attempted. And the obfuscation and weasel words also won't work, because the problems there have been laid bare, and laid bare through Yes campaigners' own statements. Now, people like Marcus Stewart are precisely why The Voice is failing, and it should. After all, if The Voice is just going to prop up such misinformation, that's a reason to vote against it. If The Voice is simply going to entrench people like Marcus Stewart, well, that is a reason to vote against it. Why would we want people like Marcus Stewart, who are going to go around and say that Indigenous senators, in fact, hate Indigenous Australians? Why would we want people like that? Because it's clearly misinformation. It's clearly verifiably false, given all of the good work that Jacinta Price has done. We can have a debate about Jacinta Price's policies. However, saying that she hates Indigenous Australians is simply beyond the pale, because it is simply outright false. And we really can't allow such false statements to go unchecked. And we can't allow such false statements to give rise to more and more power. Why should people who go around saying such false and ridiculous things be given power in the form of The Voice? It simply makes no sense. People like Marcus Stewart are a reason to vote against The Voice, and he is simply failing to make the case for The Voice to even get up. In fact, the more people like Marcus Stewart speak, well, the more The Voice is likely to fail. He's in fact one of the best assets that the No campaign has. Perhaps the Voice campaign would do a little bit better if they called it with the bullying, the misinformation, the obfuscation, and the name-calling, because that's what Australians are hearing at the moment, and Australians don't like it. Of course, Jacinta Price and Peter Dutton hit back against these comments, calling them out for the ridiculous bullying and the misinformation that they are. For example, Jacinta Price said the following.
What can I say? I mean, I'm used to, powerful Aboriginal men personally attacking me when they feel like they're on the back foot. And evidently, that is where Mr. Stewart is at. This reeks of desperation from the Yes campaign.
Peter Dutton also echoed this, also slamming the comments.
Well, it's obscene, and for all of these people who, on the left, preach tolerance and then criticise a different view from theirs, it shows the hypocrites that they are, and it's hard to imagine an Australian who's more passionate about seeing better outcomes for Indigenous people than Jacinta Price, and she shouldn't be subject to this, and the individual should apologise, and the Yes campaign should apologise as well. People aren't stupid, and people aren't going to be spoken to in a condescending way like that. The personal abuse that's been thrown at Jacinta Price and Warren Mundine and others, and many in the Indigenous community who aren't supporting The Voice, I think it's an outrage. I just stick to the facts, and the facts for our Prime Minister are inconvenient. And if he doesn't get across the detail and he doesn't understand the facts, then I think Australians will see through it.
Now, these assessments are pretty damning, and it's quite clear that the Yes campaign is struggling at the polls for a very clear reason. And Marcus Stewart and Anthony Albanese are part of the problem.